At first glance, Netflix looks like an overnight success. A red logo. A familiar sound. A platform that feels like it has always been there. But the truth is very different. Netflix didn't just rise. It survived. It adapted. It made dangerous bets. And more than once, it stood on the edge of collapse. This is not just the story of a streaming company. This is the story of how one decision, made at the right moment, can change an entire industry forever. In the late 1990s, the internet was slow, unreliable, and mostly used for email. People still rented movies from physical stores. Friday nights meant driving to Blockbuster, walking through aisles, and hoping the movie you wanted wasn't already gone. Late fees were normal. In fact, they were expected. Blockbuster made billions of dollars every year from people returning movies late. That system worked perfectly for Blockbuster. But for customers, it was frustrating. Reed Hastings didn't set out to destroy Blockbuster. In fact, Netflix was born out of annoyance, not ambition. The story goes that Hastings rented a movie, returned it late, and was charged a late fee. That small moment stuck with him. Not because of the money, but because of the system. Why should customers be punished for enjoying a movie longer than expected? Why couldn't there be a better way? At the time, DVDs were new. Most people still used VHS tapes. DVDs were smaller, lighter, and easier to ship. That detail mattered. Hastings realized that DVDs could be mailed. And if movies could be mailed, people wouldn't need to visit rental stores at all. No lines. No late fees. No pressure. In 1997, Netflix was founded. At the beginning, it didn't look revolutionary. It was a simple website where users could rent DVDs online, one at a time, with shipping both ways included. There were no late fees. You watched the movie, then mailed it back whenever you were done. On paper, it sounded risky. Shipping costs were high. Internet adoption was limited. And customers weren't sure they trusted a company to mail movies reliably. In the early days, Netflix struggled. It was burning cash. Customers were slow to sign up. Many didn't understand the concept. And competitors didn't take it seriously. Blockbuster especially saw Netflix as irrelevant. Why would anyone wait for a DVD in the mail when they could just drive 5 minutes and get one instantly? Netflix tried different models to survive. Paper rental didn't work well. What finally changed everything was the subscription model. Instead of paying per movie, customers paid a flat monthly fee and could rent as many DVDs as they wanted, one at a time. This created predictable revenue. It encouraged binge watching long before streaming existed. And it quietly trained customers to think in subscriptions rather than individual purchases. That shift was critical. It gave Netflix something Blockbuster didn't have: data. Netflix could see what people rented, how long they kept movies, which genres they preferred, and what they watched next. Every envelope mailed back was a piece of information. Netflix didn't just rent movies. It studied behavior. By the early 2000s, Netflix was growing, but it was still fragile. It wasn't profitable. It was losing money. And it faced a massive threat. Blockbuster finally noticed it. In a moment that would later become legendary, Reed Hastings approached Blockbuster with an offer. Netflix offered to sell itself to Blockbuster for around $50 million. At the time, Netflix was small. Blockbuster was a giant. The executives at Blockbuster laughed. To them, Netflix was a niche website with a strange model. They saw no reason to buy it. That decision would later be remembered as one of the biggest mistakes in business history. Netflix survived the dot-com crash, something many internet companies couldn't do. It cut costs, refined its model, and slowly built a loyal subscriber base. Meanwhile, Blockbuster stayed comfortable. It focused on physical stores, late fees, and short-term profits. Then something changed. Internet speeds improved. Broadband expanded. Digital files became easier to transmit. And Netflix saw what was coming before anyone else did. DVDs were temporary. Streaming was the future. This was the most dangerous decision Netflix ever made. Streaming wasn't proven. Licensing content digitally was expensive. Studios were skeptical. Infrastructure costs were high. And Netflix's DVD business was still working. Shifting too early could destroy everything. But waiting too long would mean someone else would do it first. Netflix chose to move early. At first, streaming wasn't impressive. The catalog was small. Video quality was limited. But Netflix didn't need it to be perfect. It just needed to work. The real strategy wasn't to compete with DVDs immediately. It was to slowly change user habits. Netflix introduced streaming as a bonus. If you already had a DVD subscription, streaming came free. Customers began experimenting with it. They watched an episode here, a movie there. Over time, streaming became normal. Behind the scenes, Netflix was collecting massive amounts of data. What people paused. What they skipped. When they stopped watching. When they binged. Netflix understood something fundamental. Content wasn't just about quality. It was about engagement. Then came the moment that transformed Netflix from a distributor into a creator. Licensing content was expensive. Studios controlled what Netflix could stream and for how long. Shows would disappear. Prices would rise. Netflix realized it was building its business on someone else's property. That was dangerous. If studios decided to pull content, Netflix would be vulnerable. So Netflix did something bold. It decided to create its own original content. At the time, this idea sounded insane. Netflix wasn't a studio. It didn't make shows. It didn't have experience producing content. And creating original series was expensive and risky. But Netflix had something studios didn't: data. Netflix knew exactly what viewers wanted. It knew which genres performed best. It knew which actors drove engagement. It knew which types of stories caused people to binge. So when Netflix decided to produce its first major original series, it wasn't guessing. House of Cards wasn't approved because someone loved the script. It was approved because data showed that viewers liked political dramas, liked Kevin Spacey, and liked the director. Netflix didn't just greenlight the pilot. It greenlit the entire season at once. That broke industry norms. When House of Cards succeeded, it sent a message. Netflix wasn't just a tech company anymore. It was a media empire. From there, the growth accelerated. Netflix expanded globally. Instead of focusing only on the United States, it launched in country after country. Many of these markets had different tastes, different cultures, and different languages. Traditional studios struggled to adapt. Netflix leaned into localization. Netflix invested in local content. It funded shows in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Some of those shows became global hits. Money Heist. Dark. Squid Game. These weren't American stories. But they worked everywhere. Netflix proved that great storytelling doesn't need to come from Hollywood to succeed worldwide. At the same time, Netflix perfected binge culture. Episodes were released all at once. Viewers could watch an entire season in one weekend. This wasn't just convenient. It was addictive. Netflix became part of people's routines. It replaced television schedules with personal control. But growth came at a cost. Netflix spent billions on content. It borrowed heavily. Critics warned that it was unsustainable. Studios launched their own streaming platforms. Disney pulled its content. Warner did the same. Competition exploded. The market became crowded. For the first time, Netflix faced slowing growth. Instead of panicking, Netflix adjusted. It experimented with pricing. It cracked down on password sharing. It explored advertising tiers. These moves were controversial, but they showed something important. Netflix wasn't frozen. It was still evolving. Netflix had never been about comfort. From DVDs to streaming, from licensing to originals, from local to global, Netflix survived by changing before it was forced to. The real reason Netflix succeeded wasn't technology. It wasn't content. It was mindset. Netflix treated disruption as normal. It was willing to destroy its own model to build a better one. Most companies protect what works. Netflix replaces it. Blockbuster failed because it protected late fees. Netflix thrived because it removed them. Studios struggled because they clung to control. Netflix won because it gave viewers freedom. Today, Netflix is one of the most influential media companies in history. It changed how stories are told, how content is distributed, and how audiences consume entertainment. It didn't just compete with Hollywood. It rewrote the rules. And the lesson behind Netflix's rise is simple but uncomfortable. Success doesn't come from being the biggest. It comes from being willing to change first. From listening more than assuming. From betting early when others laugh. Netflix didn't win because it was perfect. It won because it was adaptable. And in a world that changes faster every year, adaptability isn't just an advantage. It's survival. This is the rise of Netflix. And this is how empires are made.